billions of dollars. Nobody touches them. They are going about free. In fact, most of them are now senators, some are governors, some are ministers, all sorts of individuals. What is the effect of corruption on governance? Because if you now know is the abuse of public office for private gain. So you see a lot of individuals. That's why we talk about politically exposed persons. And today in Nigeria, I'm sure, and most other African countries, some of the richest individuals that you have are the politicians. They don't have factories. They don't have any business they're running. But yet, they're the richest. So how comes? So what is the effect of corruption? One is the erosion of public trust. The public will not trust anything. Citizens lose confidence in public institutions. And that's why I find a lot of people now, virtually because of insecurity, and they know that the government cannot protect them, what have they resorted to? A lot of Africans are going back to traditional African religion. Unfortunately, they are going back to traditional African religion. After all, they say, well, these gods that people are worshiping are foreign. So why is it that when you go to all these other countries, you go to India, they have their traditional religion. You go to China, they have their traditional. Anywhere you go, most people are doing it. But in our own case, our brains have been so brainwashed that we are worshiping foreign gods. And we don't say anything wrong with that. We even fight on behalf of some of these foreign gods, kill ourselves for nothing. So there's erosion of trust. So people now have gone to maybe to fortify themselves. They can now appear and disappear. Why? Because if they are being captured somewhere, and they feel that government cannot, even the government, security agencies will participate in paying ransom. Then where will it run to? It's a fundamental issue, and it's a fundamental problem that is confronting the society. So people have no longer any trust in any government. That's why you find even the government officials themselves don't even trust the government. That's why when they are sick, they don't patronize local hospitals there. They travel abroad. Every small illness, they go abroad. I think it is President Traore that said, well, all political officials, all politicians in this country have to patronize the local hospital. So if they will die, let everybody die there, so that they will see the need to promote good health care. So people lose trust. There's erosion of public trust. Secondly, you have economic consequences. It reduces foreign investment. That is, we won't care about any foreign investment. It reduces it because most of the companies that were operating in Nigeria, most of them have virtually withdrawn their operations out of the country because of corruption, not anything. They have been so devastated. We tried to privatize. Privatization, it didn't work. Government is not working. So what will work if all these institutions are not working? So you have economic consequences. Now you have poverty is ravaging the country because of the inability of government to just carry out certain revolutionary decisions. They are supposed to make some revolutionary decisions, like what they did in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Niger. Those countries have decided, for instance, to free themselves from foreign domination of France, particularly France. In our own case, we're even running to these European countries. Europe cannot help you. Most of the European countries, only a few of them recently have started really even condemning this neocolonialism, which Nkrumah said is the highest stage of imperialism. The highest. Because our brains have been supplanted with European ideas, with European views. Everything about Europe is what we worship, and that's what we want to do in our country. And these things are not working. So we have economic consequences. And we should know that production predates capitalism, because once society was formed, people were engaged in production. Capitalism came up after the feudal system. After feudalism, you now have capitalism. And then capitalism has been perfecting itself, because capitalism itself is supposed to collapse, but it is not collapsing. Why? Because the capitalists realize they have to bring in new things. That's why they've gone technological. Now they're using technology to advance the capitalism. And so production has become highly technological. And within seconds, clothes are being manufactured, shoes, bags, whatever you are thinking about, are being manufactured in high quantity and then sold at the international market at cost that even where the raw materials are coming from, people from those countries cannot buy some of these products. So you have economic consequences. Now we have about 133 million that Buhari's government threw into what they call multidimensional poverty. With the removal of subsidy, which Tinubu did, more people have been plunged into poverty. People are just barely existing, just trying to make ends meet. And virtually everybody has been reduced to feeding from hand to mouth. So it's a very serious, and that is a time bomb for the country. It's a big time. This economic consequences is a big time bomb. That's why you see any small oppression now, people are willing to go out and demonstrate and do anything. So it will continue like that, but it will even become worse. At a point, they may just decide, let's chase this guy out. Let's chase all of them out. And that will be eventually what will happen, because those who make peaceful change impossible are cutting violent change. So economic consequences are very, everybody is feeling it. They have social inequality. The marginalized population is often the most affected because of corruption. You find you go to the hospital, you have gone there to die because the medical doctors don't have anything to offer to you. Sometimes out of their own, because their minds are not even in the job. You may be given a wrong diagnosis and a wrong treatment, and when what's happening, you are dead. You just go and bury you. And then because we are individuals that believe that it's God that gives life, it's God that takes life, we just say, okay, God has given, God has taken. Why are they not saying that in Europe? Why are they not saying that in most of these developed countries? We are the only ones talking about that. Because in most of those other countries, lifespan for some of them 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, they are still very much active. They are not completely written off. They have governance failure, because corruption also weaken governance itself, that they will virtually fail, because virtually all the money meant, because it keeps baffling me, how can government officials, particularly at the level of governors, at the level of president, at the level of local government chairman, they'll be collecting security votes, and yet they don't have any security institution that they will use those funds, to upgrade. And so what do? You go and buy a Hilux vehicle, donate to police. Buy some boots, donate to army. Buy this and donate. Then the remaining money, they say security vote, nobody should account for it. But the money belongs to the Nigerian people. And if you are really a serious government, every penny must be accounted for. You can't say security, nobody asks questions. Why wouldn't there be questions? They are supposed to go to the parliament and even, say what they will do. They should have a budget, and the budget has to be approved, because it's public money that's supposed to be used to protect. And the primary function of government anywhere is the protection of lives and property. And so if governance has failed, because all that is happening now, everybody is just interested in what you can grab, what you can get. And that's why when you look at virtually everything that has been done, there's no any sincerity, anything. People are not honest, they are not transparent, they are not accountable, they are not responsible. It's just a bunch of some, if you like, you can call them anything. But as far as the effects of corruption on governance we are seeing, it is having a very deep effect on governance. That is what has plunged the country into darkness. That despite the spendings that have been going on in the electricity industry, no electricity. Now look at how do you combat corruption in governance. First is in a democratic system, certainly, because we are running a democracy. You see, the democracy, because for me I've been rethinking it, actually I don't believe in it. I think that it is the worst form of government, and I don't think any person should waste his time. That is the system of government that we should be advocating. Unless we are able to domesticate, use some traditional Nigerian institutions to ensure that those democratic principles are entrenched in our own traditional institutions. I don't see how we can make any serious progress. We can just be at the same spot, making movement without motion. Motion without movement. We are just stagnant and static, and we are not moving anywhere. So if you are going to combat corruption in governance, first you strengthen institutions. That means no individual should be stronger than an institution. For instance, take for instance the Nigerian police, the Inspector General of Police, his tenure, he's supposed to have retired. Now, but because individuals are stronger than institutions, what did they do? They now extended his own tenure. Meanwhile, there are other people within the same police that are being retired because they have reached the mandatory. So once the institutions are not working, and then we use tribalism, religious bigotry, and all those nonsense, we're not going to get anywhere. So these institutions are weak. They cannot translate anything into reality. That's why they are not even able to protect lives and property. So institutions have to be strong. In China, for instance, if you steal Chinese public funds, you are going to be executed. There's no any two ways about it. Unless you're a member of the Politburo, it's only members of the Politburo that are entitled to life imprisonment. But if you are at any other level outside the Politburo, it is death by firing squad, irrespective of your position. Whatever position you are holding, they will execute you. So they are very strong institutions. They have no time to look at your face or to look at you belong to a party. That one is nonsense. But here in Nigeria, in fact, even one of the party chairmen said, if you join their party, your sins are forgiven you. Whatever sins you have committed. Now you find the country itself is virtually becoming a one-party state. Why? Because the corrupt individuals that have stolen money from government are now running to join the ruling party. So that opposition doesn't really have, we don't have any opposition in the country. And for me, I've always been saying that, look, if you don't gather your strength and energy into the same direction, and that's what the Chinese have done. In China, no opposition, but they have democratic cooperation. So they cooperate, the other parties cooperate with the main party. And that is why today they are able to have an artificial sun, artificial moon. Their roads are not 1 lane, 2 lane that they are commissioning. They are commissioning, 10-lane roads, paved roads. Third, they have railways that move almost 500 kilometers per hour, because they're thinking about how they convey goods and services in a faster way. Not these Stone Age officials that we have that are there with their Stone Age supporters, because they have supporters. And I don't blame them. Illiteracy is a dangerous thing. So you empower anti-corruption agencies. Some people's cases, they have been tried since Obasanjo's regime. For 24 years, you are making trial. What sort of trial is that? That it will not end. Because the judiciary itself is just a waste of time. There's no judiciary there. So you have a problem. Unless you understand, these are very serious challenges that will plunge the country into a very serious problem in the very near future. We have wisdom blowing protection. I think they have all those things in Nigeria. Whistle blowing, where if you shoot somebody and stealing money, you can blow whistle on him. And then when you blow the whistle, what happens? But these are practices that have been introduced in order to curb, corruption. They have international cooperation, collaborative efforts to tackle transnational corruption. For instance, recently I think, even though some of these things you hear on TikTok and all those social media, but now they use artificial intelligence to make a president say things that they want to say, not that the president said anything like that. Because recently I was reading that the United States President Trump has released the names of about 24 Nigerians that have given money in the United States. Most of them in billions. And the current president has the highest amount, about 220 billion. I don't know whether it is dollars or naira they're talking about. But he has the highest amount. And yet he's the president of a country. Because in terms of integrity, morality, and anything that has to do with truth is dead when it comes to issues about Nigerian politicians. Yes, Adamu Ibn Ahmad, you want to say something?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
Please, the mic of Mr. Amos should be put on silent, please. It's interfering.
Okay, Mr. Amos, please, can you off your mic? because you are. All right, then we have, apart from international cooperation, that is collaborative efforts to tackle transnational cooperation, corruption, because corruption, when people steal money from most of these little countries, they go and bank it abroad. They go and bank this money abroad. And some of them even die, and then the money now belongs to that country. I was reading recently, somebody put up something that in the UK, several houses belonging to Nigerians that are no longer alive. The government of UK is thinking that they will sell those houses and then the money becomes their own. They are not going to return the money to Nigeria. What Nigerians are doing is just they have gone to invest in that country and they will take it over. Then you also have public engagement, fostering a culture of transparency through civic participation. You see, most of these governance issues, unless the citizens own the process, there must be some ownership of the process. And I will keep citing the case of Burkina Faso because for me, I think the man there is trying to liberate the whole of the African continent. And what he has done so far, I was just reading somewhere this afternoon before I came here, that even in France, about 400,000 or something, 44,000 workers, thereabout, I've forgotten the number, are going to lose their jobs in France, French citizens. Why? Because the simple, easy money they've been getting from most of these French countries has stopped. And then we are told of how uranium that we are taking from Niger and we are paying just $1 billion. The Nigerian government now was able to, within a short period of time, sell and realize over 300 billion. So these countries have, Africa is so rich, but there's no ownership. In Burkina Faso, for instance, it is women of Burkina Faso that gathered money and said and gave to the president that they should please take care of the welfare of the soldiers fighting against terrorists. In Nigeria, you go to the barracks, that way you know the kind of problems that the military are really facing. Some of them will tell you, look, when their husbands die, they don't pay them the entitlements of their husband, and that also is because of the problem of how they get married to their husbands. So that when they are married to their husbands, maybe the name of the next of kin didn't change, and so the wife is not even recognized. And so you find a lot of them helpless without anywhere to go to, nobody to run to. So you have a lot of problems. But when you have public engagement, even the public itself has seen corruption. For instance, Nigeria is always almost at the first, second, third position in terms of corruption. It's not as if, as I was listening to somebody say, look, these people are not even corrupt. It's the system that is corrupt. The system cannot allow you to do anything. And unless the system is changed, because these structures that we have inherited from the colonialists, they were not designed to promote any form of development. They were extractive in nature. They were to take away from the people. And that's why they're always taking. That's why the police that was established from colonial period to date, there's no any serious orientation, there's no any serious thing that has been done to change their mentality, to make them to believe that they're supposed to protect the citizens. I've been listening to some of these human rights activists. One of them was saying out of the 350,000 policemen that are available in Nigeria, almost 200,000 are following Yahoo boys, Yahoo girls, politicians, and all sorts of criminals. Because once you have money, you can hire 7 police, 8. They will give you say your life is at risk, so they give you police. You'll be paying the DPO and paying the government money. Then they'll be following everywhere. But if there's security for citizens, if citizens are secured, you don't need to have a private police or to have a private, all those things we're doing. You see it will just disappear into the thin air. And life will be better for everybody. So, but these are some of the strategies that can be used. You can think of other ways, to really promote a corrupt-free, country. Because there are several things that can be done to have a corrupt-free country. Now, there are ethical dilemmas in policy making. The ethical dilemmas are, definition of an ethical dilemma is that an ethical dilemma occurs when policy makers face conflicting moral choices, often with no clear right or wrong answer. It reflects the tension between professional duties and moral values. There are instances where you face a moral dilemma, an ethical problem, and then you find, for instance, if there are loopholes that have been allowed over time by the government, because some of these things are deliberate. Because how can a government, recently you have the case of the lady that was in the humanitarian ministry, who just the first 3 4 months of their appointment, she was able to amass so much wealth, buying houses, buying estates, buying all sorts of things. She's the only one that has been sure. I think they said they suspended her or they terminated, removed her. But has she been taken to court? No. Will FCC take her to court? No. FCC will not go and take her. FCC, after Yahoo Boys, after Very Dark Man, and all those other non-entities, Bobrisky, and all those people spraying money in parties as if this is a problem. So it reflects the tension between professional duties and moral values. I think our level of morality has gone very low. Drug addiction, all sorts of criminal behavior is now being celebrated. And unfortunately for us, we have a generation that virtually they don't care about anything. In fact, they tell you, they have coconut head. They don't care. So there's nothing that they don't experiment with. So common ethical dilemmas in governance will balancing national security, for instance, and privacy. Not too long ago, I think the United Arab Emirates sending that there are the list of terrorist financiers to Buhari, who was himself named, by Boko Haram as their own representative to go and dialogue for them. He became president. Even though he has tried to reduce when he was there as president, I think they tried their best to see that, the terrorism was at least, they say it was technically defeated. It was all sorts of terms they used that they defeated it. But part of the problem they have is, you don't, I think it was in Iraq, near one of these countries, that the president said, well, anybody who is a terrorist, for them, they will dispatch him to God. Let him go there and decide all these things he's saying in his head. They cannot forgive you if you're a terrorist. In our own case, we take them for rehabilitation and we want to now reintegrate them back into society. And I don't know why people don't want to understand that a terrorist, when you become a terrorist, you go through a process. They process you to become a terrorist. First, you become a radical. Then you become an extremist. Then you become a militant. And then finally, you are not ready to take the suicide level. You now become a terrorist. You are ready to die. So somebody who has gone through this process of training and all sorts of sacrifices that he has made to now say, look, I am ready to take anybody's life. You now say you are going to forgive him. They will have done what the Russians were doing to political prisoners. And it's the political prisoners in Russia that developed Siberia. Siberia is a modern city, in Russia. That's what they will have done with them. Take them and how can people who have destroyed other people's houses, kill them? You are not giving them VIP treatment. That they are terrorists, they are your brothers. We can't move anywhere with those kind of. So how do you balance national security and privacy? Now virtually everything is open, and the state is becoming more and more very intolerant of criticisms, which is the hallmark of a democracy. A democracy must be a system in which criticisms must be tolerated, because these are the same guys that were in opposition. There was nothing they didn't say about Jonathan. Jonathan is a drunk. Jonathan is this and that. That in fact there was a time he went for, is it African Union meeting or United Nations meeting, that he was so drunk he could not go and address it. There's no lie that these guys didn't generate on Jonathan. Jonathan, unfortunately, was not a politician as such. He's not a Nigerian politician. I've always said that, look, Jonathan should have been a president of a very calm country, not this kind of country that, the politicians majority of them are criminals. How can criminals now be mixing with people that are very saintly in their behavior and conduct? And you expect that they will not, they have removed him now. In the past 8 years now, what have they been able to achieve? Or even 10 years, what? The same subsidy that Jonathan just removed, how many naira? And increase the amount more. They cause all sorts of chaos, bonfires went everywhere. But because he's a true Democrat, allowed them to do whatever they wanted to do. Because that's the way the democracy will thrive. That's the only way democracy will succeed. Now you operate. So how do you balance national security? Because everything now they will tell you is a security threat. Every small thing is a security threat. But they don't look at the stealing that is going on in government as a security threat. The lack of facilities, no roads, no electricity, no hospitals, no school, everything is in jeopardy. That is not a threat to national security. People are hungry. That is not a threat to national security. Then how do you balance equity versus efficiency? Allocating limited resources in ways that may disadvantage certain groups. How do you balance these two? Equity versus efficiency. You want to allocate resources in ways that may disadvantage certain groups. So you have to balance. How do you balance this? For instance, I think the government was saying they are going to increase the number of people that are given these conditional cash transfer. Is 1.5 million or 15 million people that they want to be sending money to. If it is poverty alleviation you want to do, you don't alleviate poverty by giving people money. What you need to do is to train these people to be self-sufficient. If they are self-sufficient, then they can live on their own, which is what the Chinese did in 4 decades, 40 years. They removed 800 million people out of poverty. 800 million. That's the population of Nigeria, maybe about 4 times in 40 years. Our 103 million, we say we're going to spend the next, 10 years to remove people from poverty. If we are serious, we shouldn't spend more than 5 years to remove 100 million people, because the funds are there, but the stealing will not allow people to do the right thing. Then you have public interest versus political interest. Public interest versus political interest. Making decisions that serve the public versus those that benefit political allies. Now you discover that what the politicians are doing, they don't know that what they are doing is that they are setting themselves into a camp. Nobody is looking at them as all of them are the same. Both the ones that are saying they are doing merger or whatever they want to do, they are setting themselves against the Nigerian people. That's what they have done. There are only 2 parties. One are the group of the politicians, the other ones are the group of the dispossessed Nigerians. And the day those ones will wake up, those politicians cannot be in that country. Then you have the issue of so making decisions that serve the public versus those that benefit political allies. So what decisions are you making that is serving the public, that is also against those decisions you are making that is serving the interest of the political allies? For instance, you have a president that gave a contract of about 15 trillion that didn't go through any procurement process known to the Constitution of Nigeria. He cannot be impeached. Nobody is talking about impeachment. They are rather thinking how they will join his party. So at the end of the day, you have one party system. So now he doesn't need to contest again. Because one thing most African politicians are afraid of is contest. They don't want any contest. So you have a very serious issue. They have personal morality versus professional duty. Because if a person is not personally, morally upright, once he comes into his duty, his job, because there are situations where handling situations where personal beliefs conflict with professional obligations. I'll give you a story of a terrorist in Borno State who is a medical doctor. And he said, look, as a medical doctor, he has his own private clinic with about 30 nurses. And they don't know that he's a terrorist. They don't actually know he's a terrorist. But this is an account that I read in one book on Boko Haram, that he was saying that he does his job as a medical doctor. He doesn't allow his personal belief, all this killing people and all that. He doesn't kill his patients. He treats them if they are sick. But in the night, he's a terrorist. He goes to terrorize villages and all that. So you have all sorts of, how do you now separate your own personal beliefs with your professional conduct. Because you can believe in anything. You are free as a human being to believe in anything that you want to believe in. Then how do you resolve these ethical dilemmas? You have to adopt ethical frameworks utilizing guidelines such as utilitarianism, deontology, or virtue ethics. All these three are very, very important. Utilitarianism, the greatest good to the greatest number. You must always balance that in your head, that whatever you're going to do, it should be the greatest good to the greatest number. So you cannot be making laws that favor one particular group of people, but you must make law that will have, will benefit majority of the people. So you have to adopt ethical frameworks. Secondly, you have to also have stakeholder engagement involving affected communities to understand diverse perspectives of even the governance itself. Why are you not able to protect the people that are in the villages that are being taxed by bandits, are being killed by bandits? Why are you unable, for instance, to promote the security of their lives so that they can be able to go to their farms and farm? How do you now separate, all these ethnic identities from your duties? So you have to be able to, then there must be training and capacity building, enhancing ethical decision making through professional development. For instance, in the civil service, if the civil servants are not trained on what or how they are supposed to carry out their activities in the civil service, then how do we expect them to be efficient in the discharge of their responsibility? I saw somebody posted a vehicle, he said this vehicle is not meant for civil servants. Of course, it's correct. People are arguing that does it mean that they are not human beings? I say no, they are human beings, but he's just telling them the truth. But a lot of people don't. I say, what will you, as a civil servant, he's saying the vehicle is about 80 something million. How much is your salary per month that you want to go and buy a vehicle of 80 something million? They have ethical codes and standards, formulating guidelines that help navigate ethical challenges. You must have ethical codes. That's why the Code of Conduct Bureau is there. And if you are going to serve in the government at certain positions, not even at certain positions, every civil servant, every public official is supposed to declare its assets. Why are you declaring assets? Because they want to know whether you are going to abuse your office for personal gain. And that's why some of the politicians, or some of what they do, is to acquire what they want to acquire when they're up. So if you have somebody who is just newly recruited as an advisor, newly recruited to fill a form, he will tell you he has all sorts of things. Is the code of conduct able to go and verify whether he really had these things or not? You will find that the budget of that agency is small, their personnel is small. So even by the time they fill the forms and they bring it to them in cartons, in Ghana must go bags, where will they start from? They cannot be able to do anything because they've been rendered useless by the organizations or the arms of government that are supposed to give them the necessary support. At one time, even the Bureau for Statistics, simply because they're just reeling out statistics that the government was not happy about, they refuse to fund them. Even the Ministry of National Planning, they don't really think they are necessary. But you must have ethical codes and standards. And these things are there. It's just that they're not being enforced. Because I know that even if you receive gifts, you're supposed to come and declare it. And there are certain gifts that you're not even allowed to receive. But somehow, now everything has been leveled. There's nothing like that. If somebody gives you a gift, you just collect a gift and go on. And gifts tie you to an obligation. Gifts are not free. I think the book written by one Marcel Mauss, he calls his book The Gift. And in that book, you will see that gifts are not free. They tie you to an obligation and they will make you, and these are some of the entry points of corruption. Somebody wants a contract, he gives you a vehicle, dash. You have to go and approve the contract that he wants. Then the fourth subtopic we're supposed to look at is transparency and accountability mechanisms. what is the importance of transparency in governance? Government must be open. Once you say government, that's something that is public. And what is public is for the general, is for everybody. It's not a private thing. If it is something that is private to you, then you can have your own privacy. You may not need to say anything. But if it's a public, organization, then you must have some level of transparency. Transparency ensures that government operations are open, accessible, and understandable. It promotes accountability by allowing citizens to monitor government actions. And I think that's what the civil, even democracy cannot survive without civil society. And that is what I think some of the civil society organizations have been doing, putting the government on its toes, trying to say, okay, we are following this budget. And some of them, even in the parliament, realizes that, they are supposed to be transparent. So I saw a young, I think member of House of Reps who was asking questions, why are they buying vehicles every year? Why are they buying computers every year? Why are they buying, that these things have lifespan? Why should they be buying every year? Why should they be budgeting every year for some of these items? Which means even the people budgeting, doing the budget, have no time to look at what they are budgeting for. They just say, okay, last year we gave a budget how much? They say we have a budget of 1 trillion. So let's increase it to 1.5 now. So all they do is just look at some sub heads and just increase the budget. Because what they do in government is what they call incrementalism. Incrementalism is just small increases here and there. So they are not going to do any revolutionary or give you any revolutionary package. So transparency ensures that the government operations are open, they're accessible, and understandable. But in Nigeria, every government activity is a secret. Every government activity is a secret. So how do you run a government that is everything is a secret? Even with the Freedom of Information Act, it's still a secret. So what are some of the mechanisms of transparency? Some of the mechanisms to promote transparency in all these secret society governments. One is freedom of information laws. There have to be laws that allow citizens to ask questions and they should be given the answers to those questions. So freedom of information laws is one of the ways of promoting transparency. Legal rights for citizens to access public records. And if even in most some of these developed countries, after 10 years, they declassify some of the documents that they're saying is a secret. They make it available to the public, even security documents. They make it available to the public. Recently, I think in America, because of the government of Trump, they have been, because that government, they say empires rise and fall. I think America is falling. It has come to a point it has to fall. It has spent more than 100 years. All the money they're making is to just pound people into line. They were not investing and building their own, infrastructure. China was investing, building its own infrastructure. Today, they are one of the global giants when it comes to industry. And they have the resources because their people are able to partake, in several industries. So they are converting raw materials into finished goods. America now, in their construction industry, they have such shortage of personnel because Trump said he's deporting virtually everybody back to his country, which I said was a very good policy, for a lot of people because remain in your country and develop your country. Why should they be going to, develop other countries? Then you have public reporting, publishing government financial records and audit reports. I think when Kwankwaso was governor of Kano State, on a monthly basis, I think he was providing some records of accounts. Whether these records are being scrutinized is another thing entirely, but I think he was at least able to provide accounts that this is the amount that came in, this is what they did. And that's how to run a government and to make activities of government to be transparent. You cannot receive public funds and you are not explaining to anybody how the money has been spent. Nobody knows. Everything is hidden. So you have public reporting, publishing government financial records and audit reports. They have open data initiatives, making data publicly available to enhance government accountability. All these political parties, particularly the big ones, so anyway, most of them are even collapsing. After election, I think how many months after election, they're supposed to submit to INEC reports of their campaign funding. Both the candidates are supposed to submit their campaign funding to INEC, and then the party itself is supposed to submit its report. I did a paper not long ago on some of these things, and I discovered that PDP, APC, most of the big parties have not been submitting their reports. In fact, it is the smaller parties that have been doing that, and they are doing it because they are afraid that they may be, deregistered if they don't do it. But the main parties, the Obonge parties, they don't give any report, and nobody has sanctioned them. And this is a requirement. So most of these things are there in terms of law and all that, but they're not being followed. Then social media and digital platforms, because now government, whether they like it or not, have to be open, they have to be transparent, because social media will not leave them. They've tried all they can to gag it, but it has become impossible. A time has come that government is now open. Just look at what Trump said he was going to do. That he's going to kill the president of Burkina Faso. Then Africans now said, no, you remain in your country and solve the problem of your country and leave the president of Burkina Faso alone. And there were demonstrations globally in different parts, including the Caribbeans. They now said they're Africans. So we now have 54 African countries with about 13 other black African countries in the Caribbean. So you add the number of African countries in the world is bigger than any other race. They have the largest number of countries. And so you cannot now continue to think you can gag. You can do what you did to Gaddafi, what you did to Patrice Lumumba, what you did to John Magufuli, what you have done, killing all these people. Any African leader that is going to salvage his country, they eliminate him. That's what they do. But thank God now with Ibrahim Traore, a lot of countries now are saying, no, we're going to control our resources. We're not going to allow you, because they've seen, why should we be going to IMF, World Bank to be borrowing money when we have a lot of mineral resources underneath our country? Because they will come up with all sorts of ideas that government has no business in business. Says who? Americans are giving all sorts of support to their own citizens. Then they'll come and tell you that government has no business in business. Why should you believe those kind of things? They say you want to privatize everything. These are the tricks they came with: privatization, commercialization, so that we've sold virtually everything. And then you don't, even though some of the privatized entities have worked, for instance, the telecom has worked, because in those days to even have a telephone, acquire a telephone is a big problem. But now, cross over the street, and in our own case, there's even no any serious regulation as such. In other countries, you have to come with your identity card, your passport, everything. You can't use any fictitious name and obtain a SIM card, because they want to know who is making all these threats and all that. You can easily be traced and fished out. It's also a security, process. But in our own case, people just do what they like. So direct engagement and dissemination of information to the public can be done. So, and it's easily been done now through the social media. So a lot of these presidents and all that, they have Twitter handles, they have all sorts of things. They send message, and within a second, message has gone around the world. Then 4.3 is about accountability mechanisms in governance. How do you put in accountability mechanisms? Because the problem we're having is there are no, or even when these accountability mechanisms are there, they are not being obeyed. They are not being followed. I know this government came in and they said they're having I think somebody who read literature or something as the policy. That's the person that's going to be looking at the policies of government, whether they're being implemented or not. Meanwhile, we have a lot of professors of policy analysis that have written books on policy analysis. They will not be touched. They have to be kept at a distance, because they don't want such a person with knowledge. They don't want that. They don't come and behave like Humphrey Owosu. Even when the results, Babangida said they should stop announcing that June 12th result. He said, no, as you said, you are going to even give us national honors if we complete the election. So we are continuing. They have to come and bundle him out of what they call NEC. I think that time it was NEC, just to stop the announcement of the result. But they already got the winner. They knew Abiola has won, and they didn't want to hand over to him. So accountability mechanisms in governance include auditing and monitoring. There's no way you give a contract and the contract has no lifespan. It will be forever and ever. You are constructing road just from Abuja to Kaduna, 156 kilometers of road. You have been doing that for the past how many years? From Abuja to Lokoja, how many years? You cannot complete the roads? Standard roads, even before the roads are being, while the construction work is going on, some part of what has been newly constructed is already bad. What sort of standard is that? So auditing and monitoring, they are very important, if you want to independent assessment of government activities. There must be some way that activities of government can be accessed. You can assess their performance and see whether they are performing or not. And that is what the Chinese do. China, you don't move from any rank, from local government to maybe district or province or, all these things. You cannot move like that. They will look at, okay, you are the governor of this state. So what is the per capita income that you met? And unemployment and all those things. So what have you, because there are indices to measure whether you are performing or not. So they will look at what you have done, and that will all qualify you to go to the next stage. They can't bring somebody who doesn't know anything he's doing and say they are empowering, giving him position. In Nigeria, all you need to do is to brag that you have done this, you have done that, you are a human rights activist, you are this and that. Just bragging, not that you have done anything really. We have seen where people were claiming Lagos that was capital of Nigeria until when Murtala decided to change the capital, and then I think Shagari also, made some physical infrastructure. And then Babangida, when he was chased out of Lagos by coupists, he now said he has returned. Then Abacha that now give a deadline, come back, come to Abuja, or you are already no longer part of the government. So you have to have some performance, also performance appraisals, regular evaluation of public servants' performance. Now we have key performance indicators that can be used, to measure your performance in your place of work. Whether you are doing the right thing or are not doing the right thing. Whether you are able to contribute to the growth of the society or you are not able to do that. So performance appraisal become a very important aspect. And that's how you are supposed to promote people and even give them responsibility on the basis of what they've done. Not just bring people that have no idea. For instance, now you have somebody they say is Minister of Power. He's just telling stories. Storytelling. Meanwhile, you have experts. Pat Naji was brought in, I think, when PDP was there, an expert in this energy thing. And that's how, when they sacked him, I think when he now went to his state, they started another, electricity company there. And now, particularly, for instance, in Aba, electricity is being provided, particularly to the industries, because a lot of small and medium scale industries in Aba that are producing goods that can compete anywhere. But Nigerians will not buy it. Rather, they prefer, Italian-made, things. Italian belt, Italian shoes, Italian suits, and so on. So have performance appraisal. Then public hearings and consultations, direct citizen participation in decision-making processes. There is not an offense to engage the citizens. Engage them. You want to do something, you hear their opinion. That is the democracy. So that they give you their inputs. But when you say, no, they don't matter, you sit down in one cozy office, you want to take a decision for somebody in Sokoto in an area that is already ravaged by bandits. You don't even know that the village is no longer there. Or in Borno, where several people have been dislodged, from their villages. The villages are no longer existing. But you are busy, say you want to go and build, boreholes, you want to go and build. There is nobody there. But if you hold public hearings, you hear people tell you their own views. Don't just think people have nothing upstairs and they cannot find anything. They have, tradition and history. And that is why when America came up with the idea that they're going to impose tariffs on the Chinese goods, that they don't want them again. China also responded, they said, okay, fine. How old is America? America is just 250 years old. They say, how old is China? China is 5,000-year-old civilization. Then a young boy of yesterday is telling them, he wants to tell them, what is he going to tell them? What have they not seen in this world? And most of their own civilization, most of the things that they have historically, they are still there. They kept the relics just to know that this is where we're coming from. So if you go to the Sin City in China, where the emperors were staying, you see the palace, how big it is, and how Just one individual and his wife and children are staying inside there and being served by thousands, of servants. And these servants don't live in the city, in that forbidden city. They have to go. They come and walk there and go because they have to show power. It's not America now that is virtually retracing a step every day. They say, "Oh no, the tariffs are no longer going to be high again," and so on because they are the ones losing. You don't go and meet people. That's why the Chinese will tell you, look, every problem you have, don't you have a history of how these problems have been solved? Did you just drop from the moon? Don't you have, you didn't have any such, you know, history of how problems in your own communities have been solved in the past? So people have knowledge. If you consult them, they will provide you with the knowledge. If you don't consult them, they will not, participate. And then you just be running your government on the basis that you are failing every day, but you believe that you are succeeding. If every day you tell people, we have made very good success, and you tell lies every day because lying is part of, all these things they are doing. Most African leaders, what they do is to go and bring the Prince, written by Machiavelli, a letter that he wrote to his friend when his friend was appointed a prince, and he was looking at him that for him to be a strong prince, these are the things he needs to do. That he can tell lies, that he can, but he has to be strong like the lion, and he must be very wise like the fox. He must do this and do that. These are the things people are reading in this 21st century. Something that was written in the 16th century, 15th century. That's what somebody is bringing now in this modern age and time. That you have to be crafty. That the state has its own morality, and that the morality of the state is the morality of success. How the state succeeds is not important. Any way to follow, as long as it will succeed, that is what is important. So people bring also some, debased ideas and a very primitive way of reasoning, and they say they want to govern modern society with some of these primitive ideas. They have judicial oversight. If you want to have accountability mechanism governance, there has to be judicial oversight, legal processes to challenge unethical or unlawful acts. That is why societies where the judiciary is working, it doesn't matter your position, it doesn't matter your money, they don't care about these things. They will bring you to justice. They are the careless. Then what are some of the challenges to accountability? What are some of the challenges to accountability? We can have some of them, we talk about them. One is political interference. This undermines the independence of oversight bodies, political interference. You want to go and do some oversight work, they say, no, leave that person alone. He's our member, or he belongs to us. Just a minute. Sorry, but we're talking about political interference, and we see political interference in different ways. That individuals have cases in court, and the court processes are not really working to convict them. Okay, so you have also some political interference. Sometimes it could be. I think recently, I think the senators representing Borno State, I think they were doing something about this new ministry that was created on animal something, this livestock something, and Borno is one of the states that has very large population of livestock. It's just that the Lake Chad has dried up, virtually dried up, and just a small, it has shrunken, only a small piece of the lake is remaining. If not so, it used to attract, because I've witnessed that, because I've lived in Kukawa for about 2 years. Kukawa is in Borno State. That is supposed to be the headquarters of Boko Haram now. I've lived there, so I know that it's a very rich area when it comes to livestock. But unfortunately, they were not listed. So the senators had to protest and all that. I don't know whether they will be included now. So, but the program was supposed to be, they are supposed to carry out some experiments in some few zones, not all the zones of the country. But I think the Northeast senators felt, why were they excluded? So they had to make noise so that they could be included in that program or in that process. So you find a lot of interference, in the activities of government. It may have sometimes it may be, for instance, I know that even the removal of our vice chancellor, some people were not happy that the vice chancellor was removed, sacked together with the council. I think they went to court. They are challenging the president that he doesn't have power to sack. That the only way you can. So yeah, all sorts of political interference. Because if the institutions are working the way they should work, for instance, when that appointment was being carried out, we raised the problem. We told them, look, nobody's putting a gun on your head. You cannot say you have a deadline that the letter has been given to you from the Ministry of Education. You must complete the exercise by 31st of December. You have all the time. We have our representatives that we elected them from Senate to participate in the interview. You now said you have already done shortlisting for them, and this is their job to do the shortlisting, not your job. Now they abused the entire process, and then brought a 2-year-old professor and said that's the vice chancellor. 2 years old. And then left people who had experience when it comes to university, because sometimes in the university, if they want to favor you, they say, okay, they appoint you head of department, you go and stay there for 2 months, you have not even presented any result to anybody. But you write in your CV, you're head of department. They make you dean or assistant dean. You have not even, matriculated any set of students. You spend 2 months there, they say you have been dean. They now go and give you another one, they say you are a director. You have not done anything. 2 years, 2 months, you are staying. In 1 year, you have already gone around all the offices because they say they're preparing you to be vice chancellor. So when you have such nonsense going on, even in the universities, then how can you now, in the larger society, how can you now ensure that people don't allow the institutions to work? Allow institutions to work. Challenges to accountability, secondly, is the lack of political will. The will to be accountable is not there. Governments may resist measures that expose corruption. And that is why, if you take all the appointments that have been made, and nobody is saying that in the past they did the right thing. I think the Obasanjo's government was the one that was able to, because Obasanjo, up to tomorrow, even though he may not be liked by a lot of people, but I think he was able to, balance up his appointments, make sure that, the appointments spread, into virtually any competent Nigerian. That's when he was bringing people that were competent. He brought some of them from America and was even paying them in hard currency so that they can remain. And people were crying, why is he doing that and that? But he wanted a system to be put in place that will allow the country to develop. That there should be processes. And some of these people are the ones that came up with all these things about due process, procurement act, all sorts of things, just to ensure that, the public service is standardized. There was even a Bureau of Public Service reform. They were trying to reform the civil service so that it will become really a 21st century civil service, not a Stone Age civil service where everything cannot be done on time, because they will tell you that, look, government work not be finished, not be papa work. Government work must be done slowly. So when people have this kind of mentality, it's a big problem. Complex bureaucracies, also challenges of accountability. You have complex bureaucracies, complicated structures can hinder effective accountability. When you have complicated structures and they are all working not in unity, not by cooperating, take the issue of security. If not now that they are talking about even interagency relations or cooperation or whatever. In the past, DSS want to be the one to take the credit. NIA wants to be the one to take the credit. Civil defense wants to be the one to take the credit. They don't think of if we cooperate, like the soldiers, when soldiers went and when the Mohammed Yusuf was creating problem in Bedouran, they attacked and captured him alive. And they know that it's not their job to prosecute civil cases. So they took him, handed him over to police. Once he was handed over to police, the governor now came with his shirt, and this man's hands were tied. But the police claimed that he was fighting them. How can somebody's hands be tied at the back and you say he's fighting you? They killed him. Since the killing of that man, have we seen any peace? When he was even alive, who are the people taking his bail? They were taking his bail. When they said they banned the use of people, you can't ride machines without wearing a helmet. And his members were defying that. Police attacked them on the day they were going for burial. And the man said they are going to retaliate. He said this clearly, they are going to retaliate. And from that time, he now said all Boko Haram members all over the country should come and meet, they should go to Maiduguri. They went there, a lot of them were killed, by the soldiers. Because the moment some of them came, they don't even know that there was a problem. And police were already there, waiting for anybody coming to say he's going to Mohammed Yusuf's mosque area. The moment they say, I'm going to Mohammed Yusuf, they say, stay there. That's how they will gather them and then execute them. Then Amnesty International will say, no, that you are violating the rights of people. Meanwhile, these people are killing, slaughtering people like rams. Amnesty International didn't come to say anything. Then now we are now beginning to understand that it was even an American engineered, insecurity. Because the American senator said it, that we are using USAID to promote all these crises, in Nigeria. Not only in Nigeria, in several parts of the world. They were supporting El Shabaab, supporting, all these Al Qaeda and all of them. So we have resource constraints, also a very big, challenge to accountability. Resource constraints, lack of funding for anti-corruption and transparency initiatives. By the time you look at the budget of EFCC, ICCC, and all those other code of conduct, any agency that is supposed to be the NFIU, that is supposed to be doing any fight against corruption, they are usually starved of funds. So when you starve them of funds, then how will they operate? So resource constraint is a big, issue for most of these institutions. So we can say that to a large extent we will be able to address this topic that has to do with ethics and also with accountability and corruption. So I think we may have to call it a day here, because ethics, accountability in governance, I think you can also do some more readings on your own. And then the questions I promised you, well, I will try and send them to you by next week. When is your exam coming up? When are you writing exam?
We really don't know, sir.
We were told end of May, sir. End of May.
29th, 30th, and 31st.
Okay, good. I may be returning by around 18th or so. I'll be in Nigeria. So we can have a review of most of these things, and then, but next week I'll send you the assignments so that you can do them and submit before. So we just have one topic left, I think.
Thank you, Paul. I recommend.
So if it is possible, then we can conclude the class by next week. If we can just take any time next week before Friday, we can conclude the class. Then I give you assignment, and then we can do revision maybe the upper week before your exams.
I think that is fine.
That will be okay, right?
Yes,
so
yes, sir.
Which day?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Which day next week do you think we can conclude it? Because we need to conclude so that we can, now prepare for revision, questions and all that, so that it will not be difficult for you.
Can we look at Tuesday or Wednesday, Prof?
Tuesday is okay by me.
The The house,
The only thing is what time on Tuesday? Maybe you can suggest a time then.
maybe 4 to 6, just like this time.
Okay, that's fine. So next week 4 to 6 we meet and then conclude the class.
Thank you, Prof.
So thank you so much.
Yes, sir. I want to first and foremost appreciate and thank you for a well taught lecture, and to equally give my 10 kobo input as regards to the current political, social, and economic instability of the country.
Yeah.
Honestly, we have a long way to go, especially as student of PPG, that is public peace and public governance, student of this class.
Yes.
Going by what is currently happening, one will begin to ask himself, do we really care for this generation and the generation unborn? While other countries are preparing ground for generation unborn to come and continue from where they stop, we are killing the upcoming generation, leaving debt behind for them to come and clear, making the whole thing look like we are acting a movie. In the health sector today, for anyone who needs an average treatment, you must part away with nothing less than 20 to 25,000 for malaria treatment.
Yeah.
That of security, you raise a lot of burning issues, ranging from the quote and unquote the VIP taking 5, 6, 7 policemen in a population of more than 200 million citizens. It is expected that one policeman should be able to guard at least 5 to 10 citizens.
I think the ratio is higher than that.
Okay.
The ratio is higher than that.
Okay. Is it 5 to 10 or 10 to 20? I think it's between 10 to 20. Now, Prof, from Sokoto to Zamfara, for those that are applying that road, it has been a while I applied that road, but 4-5 years back, you leave Sokoto to Zamfara. If not during that Boko Haram period, that the whole thing was very tense, hardly will you see security presence in 4 to 5 places from Sokoto to Zamfara. The same thing if you are applying Ekiti down to Osun, coming to Kogi. In those spots, Prof, hardly will you move 2 kilometers without noticing the presence of security. So I begin to ask myself, is it that those people are more security conscious than us, or is that their governors prioritize the lives and property of their citizens than our own governor? Because I don't understand. If you look at the current Federal Executive Council, the ministers from the southern part seems to be more proactive than the ministers from the northern part. Was it a deliberate attempt or what? Because sometimes it baffles my imagination that, come on, this is a country where we all believe that if the right thing are done, there are a lot of intellectuals out there that are just waiting for slightest opportunity to change the narrative. But the trend at which we are going now, the policymakers or the government, they plan for people, they don't plan with the people. And you made mention of somebody planning for a community that does not even exist because he doesn't even know whether or not those communities exist. When you dig a borehole in a community, perhaps borehole may not be their problem. Their problem may be lack of school. So if you sit with them, and that brings the area of public engagement. If you engage the citizens, they will be able to tell you what and what they need, what and what they don't need. Their short and long term needs will be available for the policymakers to look into. But it's unfortunate that every government that come on board will want to hurriedly put one or two things on board, cash out, settle its members, and prepare for next election. So on this note, Prof, I want to thank you, like I said, and it is now a challenge for we, the students, to begin to look inward, and we must not look at the bigger picture. We may decide to start from our own communities. What and what do we think we can do to improve the lives of the people in our community? Gone are those days where educations are supposed, after graduation, you are supposed to be job provider and not job seeker. Unfortunately, today, most of our graduates are job seekers as against them to be job providers. The educational sector is tailored into theoretical rather than practical. And all those things need to be addressed going forward. And no country, like I do tell people, there is no country that will move or that will grow ahead of the quality of education being received. A child can never be older than his parent. If the education sector is not revitalized and reviewed, especially the curriculum and all these outdated syllabus we are treating, we must localize both the education sector, the health sector, all the sector need to be localized. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you so much. I will just chip in this small information. The police ratio is 1 police to 1,000 inhabitants. That's what the United Nations have recommended. 1 policeman at least to 1,000. Now, when you look at the case you are given, I've lived at Obehi. Obehi is in Abia State, but it's just a stone throw to Port Harcourt. Between Obehi and Port Harcourt, I think, or is it from Abba? From Abba to Port Harcourt, there are about 44 checkpoints. 44. 22 on both sides. The distance is not more than 15 kilometers from Obehi to Port Harcourt. 22 roadblocks by police. And the roadblocks even increase in the night, because even the police that have retired in the night, they will come there and mount their own roadblock. So it appears that it's because of what they are getting. I think it's just what they are getting from the drivers, because anywhere you're passing, you must pay. It's like a checkpoint for collecting money, nothing more than that. And somebody even wrote in a newspaper how his vehicle his vehicle broke down along this Ibadan Lagos Expressway, close to a police checkpoint. So he decided let him just be counting number of trailers, cars that are stopping and paying, because I think the trailers they were collecting 500 naira from them. Buses was about 200 or 300. Then small cars 100 naira. And when he made his calculation, he said in a day, what they can realize in a month is about 1 billion. That's just one checkpoint. By the time you calculate what they are collecting all over the country, and then these monies will now be shared at different until it gets to the IG himself. That's why they will just tell you they have banned the roadblocks. They will remove the police is not supposed to have pockets in his uniform and all those drama. But at the end of the day, they cannot really stop it, because again, when you take even the budgeting for the police, they don't fund them when it comes to fueling their vehicles to even carry out patrols and all those things. They don't fund them. That's why the police will go to, they have to collect all this money. When they see you, they say, stop, buy fuel for us. And you sometimes have no choice but to do what they want. And then, of course, what we're talking about in terms of the development that we need to look inwards, unless we discard most of these foreign ideas that we have put in our heads. And now let me tell you something. This is a country that we have religion, and most of us, they say we are very, most times I used to say that there's too much love for religion without the fear of God. Then you take the unregulated, because that sector is not even being regulated. What Kigame did in Rwanda is that he gave them standards. There are standards for you to have a mosque, to have a church, and he's always been closing the churches and mosques, those ones that didn't meet the standard, because he will tell you, if for every church or mosque, you must have this number of toilets depending on the space you have, and you must have this number of parking space, so you can't go and block any person's road that you're doing crusade or you're doing. You cannot even do that, because you'll be arrested. Your license will be. Then you must also have at least you must have a degree or a diploma in theology. Say, fools cannot just say because they can read these things, and they generate all sorts of stupidity and foolishness. We are seeing these things clearly, and people will be telling you that the touch not my anointed. Who's anointed? These are criminals that are supposed to be arrested and locked up. A lot of them are just criminals. They say they're doing religion. Nothing religious about what they're doing. So unless these things are attacked, and streamlined in such a way that the genuine ones can be allowed to do what they're doing. These ones that are not genuine, it doesn't matter somebody's age, because some people look at some of these old people and think these are just 419ers, majority of them, and this is an unregulated sector. That's why Yusuf Mohammed came with his own and said no, that you cannot accept Western education. Western education is evil, is bad. Meanwhile, he was using a cellular phone made by Western education, using a gun, AK-47, made by Western education, wearing clothes, produced in a textile factory, and all those things. He didn't see those ones as bad. So unless we begin to understand that, look, this unregulated religion must be regulated. Can't just be doing religion that is not regulated. People just do what they like. Everybody just come out and say he has a dream. You have malaria, go and treat it, and stop telling people you have dream and you're making progress of what? Now, if you listen to science, even science now, I was listening to something that somebody posted on death, that they try to track, I think it's in Israel or Germany, they try to track a human being. They inserted something in his brain just to find out whether or not people are saying if somebody is dead, he goes to heaven. They said they were tracing at a point, they lost track of that person, but it appears as if he has gone to another galaxy or something, some other thing. So at the end of the day, because we have brains to think, that's why we should be able to think, and we should be rational. But anything that you say, questions cannot be asked. And where we want to ask questions? The only place you cannot ask questions is in religion. And that's why it is the opium of the masses. Majority of the poor people, they defeated them by telling them, no, you don't have any hope here on the world. You have hope in heaven. You have hope in Al-Jannah. So you should forget about this world. Your suffering that you're going through has been designed for you by God. Meanwhile, your exploiters are right beside you, exploiting and stealing everything that will be used to make your life better. And somebody is pointing you to God. So some of these things, unless people sit down to think critically, I think some of the problems are religion is part of it. You go to ethnicity, also part of it. Go to Rwanda now. The president, in their form, you don't feel whether a Tutsi or a Hutu. You don't. It's even been made a crime. So you just look at yourself as a Rwanda. That's all. In our own case, I'm Yoruba, I'm Hausa, I'm Fulani, I'm this, and I'm Jukun, I'm this and that. Okay? So, and these ethnic identities that have been created are being used by the politicians. That's why now PDP came with a good idea. Power should rotate between the north and south. In the north, when the power comes, it goes to northwest. Are they the only north? There's no north central, there's no northeast. In the south, when it goes to southwest. So there's no south-south, there's no southeast. Unless we design a process, and I think in Niger State, they were able to get this correctly, that they rotate their governor in the 3 senatorial districts. So each district, senatorial district will produce a governor. So if the same tribe are being produced, fine. If there are other ethnic groups that are given opportunity, let's see. Is there going to be any difference? Is it ethnicity? This is a class issue. Those people belong to a class, the class of exploiters. And as a class, and unfortunately, if you are, when you look at the elites in Nigeria, they are very destructive. Somebody was saying we don't have elites. I say we have. It's just that they are destructive. They are not the kind of elites that think of tomorrow. This issue I'm talking about, they are collecting debts, they don't care about future generation. Of course, they don't care. All they after is today. Whether they can buy a jet, and how many jets do they have? Be bragging. I have 5. You, how many do you have? These are the things they do. It's not as if they are doing anything to better the lives of the ordinary people. While in Burkina Faso now, children in primary school, what are they doing? The president has made available to them computers. And some of them are now designing robots and designing things at that tender age. That country will disgrace Nigeria if they continue, if the president doesn't derail, even though the Europeans are trying to kill him. Because Africa must remain for them a place where they will come and exploit our resources and then continue to have fools that will govern us. Who will just tell you, the expert in nothing. China is where it is today. Go to China, the Politburo, all of them have PhDs. That's why they are where they are. When people tell you knowledge is not necessary, when doing what? Everything that will have, they develop these theories and they practicalize it. And that's why they have gone too far. Now America is coming behind now. They're discovering that, America has not developed for the past. All they are doing is just sponsoring terrorists and killing people. And it is too late for them. So I think, really, unless we begin to think and free our minds from what Fela was talking about, all this Bob Marley, mental slavery. Because even the theories, all these things we read, well, we don't just read them and just accept them, line, hook, and sinker. We have to interrogate them. Does it contribute to my own, oppression, or will I be free by this thing that they are talking about? Theoretically, so what will I use to challenge it? I was talking recently. I said, look, my understanding of Nigerian democracy is that because this will not change. Now, why don't we have a system? Because it's all this power struggle that has created all this insecurity. And this the APC people. Kaubara just said clearly that they brought this insecurity. They brought these talks to come and disrupt the country before the 2015 elections. After the 2015 election, after they have even won the election, they ask these people to go, they say they are not going anywhere. And they now have become a problem to us. Now they are saying they are calling their brothers from Senegal, everywhere, that they should come to Nigeria. Now when you look at it, if, for instance, because I've said, from the votes acquired by Atiku, about 6.something million, votes acquired by Obi, about 6.something million, votes acquired by what's his name? Pomkwaso, 1.something million. If they say for each 1 million vote that you have, because the government, now election is over, now how do we run the country? At least you've seen the way Wike, even though his own assignment there is to destroy the opposition. But let's assume that he was brought in by PDP. And for each 1 million vote, you have 1 minister, which means the PDP, the Labour Party and NNPP combined, they will have like about 13 ministers. Then the remaining ministers will be produced by the major party. And when you take, every state is supposed to have, now you have about 48. So if you just have 13 of these different people, you will have some level of cooperation and peace. Because now they will be looking at, if we can have more votes, we'll have more ministers. So they don't feel that they have lost everything. But now in a system where when you contest, these votes have been wasted, even though they are even more than the number of votes that the president had. The president had just 8 million plus votes. These people combined, their votes are close to about 15 million or even 16 million votes. So now if you have a situation where there is some democratic cooperation, because we must think outside the box. If we just say, no, you can't run a democracy, multi-party system like that, okay, continue like that, let's see where it will take you. And then I have said, look, for the other marginalized groups, there must be a deliberate effort to say we are going to give these lots to women as a quota, these lots to the youth as a quota, these lots to labor as a quota, so that they will be in this parliament and debates can take place. And then you can have a system where even the ministers and all those people participate in the government by going to the parliament, so that everybody knows we'll be on the same page. The only judiciary now, they will need to review the judiciary to ensure that judgments are not delayed. If a case goes in, it shouldn't stay more than, if it stays more than this, the judge will just say, okay, you come back in the next 3 months. Why? If you can't do the job, then you let them bring somebody who can do it. Or you create more courts so that you have, you dispense justice quickly. And then maybe when we begin to do things that will help us, we are human beings. We should be thinking of what solutions can we provide that will allow us to have peace in our country. People are just looking for power. They create all sorts of brigade of criminals to be disturbing the peace of other people. Because now you discover that all sorts of politicians, why are they not able to release the list of that was sent to them from United Arab Emirates, of people who have been financing this terrorism? Who are the people collecting the money? Nobody heard anything about it. But citizens are beginning to ask questions. And that is the beauty of the social media. That's why they are arresting people left, right, and center. But the more they are doing that, it always shows that, maybe they're just numbering their days, because it will get to a point where this may be intolerable and citizens may react in a way that the entire thing may crumble. So I think it is for them to now really give peace a chance and to ensure that, Nigerians are given the opportunity, because these resources belong to all of us. It doesn't belong to the politicians. And yet the only people, riding new cars, building hotels, building estates and all that are in the political class and the civil servants who are exposed to funds. So I think it is really very good for people to think critically, not just to accept all these Western, ideas that are aimed at, because democracy is even a slow process. What are we going to achieve? 24 years. Then take the quantum of funds that have been borrowed, that have been, raised internally, and yet we don't have any new city. Egypt was building a new city. We don't have any new. What really do we have? Nothing. So I hope that we'll be able to, because we are the ones that have the opportunity to be in several government positions. We don't use our positions now to oppress people. We use the positions to bring better life for the people. On this note, I will thank you and then hope that we'll see you again on Tuesday. So do have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.